By its own very nature, getting rich isn't complicated, but because of the way we perceive the world, specifically wealth, we struggle to wrap our heads around the idea of being able to afford anything we've ever wanted. But because it's our perception of the world, we have the ability to change it and in turn change the results of our actions. Way back in the late 1800s, there was a guy named Wattles who wrote a book titled The Science of Getting Rich. And if it wasn't clear by now, this video is going over some of the key ideas so you can learn them in a few minutes instead of however long it takes you to read a book. It's actually a pretty good book, but realistically, most people will miss out on the lessons unless they watch a video on it. So I'm here to give you a quick rundown. There's 3 main ideas that are discussed throughout the book. Idea number 1 is that the money is simply a unit of value and a way to store the value we've created in a physical form. Idea number 2 is that your thoughts create your reality, but there's a little more to it than that. And idea number 3 is a secret little perspective shift that will trigger the first domino that will make you get rich. So we'll save that for the end. Let's start on idea number 1. Because we live in a world of ultra wealthy billionaires and unethical business tycoons, the general public tends to see wealth as something that's bad and should not be chased after. But wealth and money aren't inherently bad. They just multiply the characteristic that we already have. And truthfully, most people throw stones at wealthy people because they want that wealth for themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask each other what they would do if they won the lottery. So if we can shift our mindset to see money and wealth as the value we provide, as opposed to value that we take, then we no longer have to feel guilty about wanting to be rich. And instead, we can feel good about wanting to share valuable things with the world. You shouldn't ever feel bad about wanting to give back to people. This ties back to helping you develop a method for yourself to get rich, because you stop seeing wealth as something to take and start to see it as something to give. You become rich by providing as much value as you can to as many people as you can in as short of a time as possible. Keep that idea in mind because it's going to come into play when we discuss idea number 3. Idea number 2 is that your thoughts are what create your reality. But like I said before, there is a little more to it than that. For the sake of this explanation, I want to differentiate between thoughts and ideas. So let's just say that ideas take place in the mind and are the solutions to our questions. When we think of an idea, we're really thinking about a solution to a problem that we experience often enough for it to take up space in our minds. Thoughts must be our knowledge of what actions we need to take in order to bridge the gap between our ideas and reality. Let me give you an example. Say we're that person from idea number 1 who wants to be super wealthy. We want all the fancy cars and the big mansion and billions upon billions of dollars so that we can spend it on wherever we want, whenever we want. But we don't actually have those things yet because they're just ideas in our mind. So here we have 2 options. We can either convince ourselves that it's wrong to want that, which we already established isn't a smart thing to do if we want to be rich. Or we can continue bouncing the idea around our head until thoughts start to form about how to make the idea happen. And now the idea is more than just an idea, because our thoughts are helping us pull it closer to reality. You can start to see how as soon as we remove that limitation of saying that wealth and the desire of wealth are bad things, we can begin forming a path towards making our ideas real. In fact, there is a central theme throughout the entirety of the book. It's not that wealthy people are wrong or bad just because they're wealthy. Most people don't even truly think of them as bad people, but they're dealing with their own insecurity by pushing others down instead of pulling themselves up. When we remove that judgment we have towards ourselves for wanting things that seem like they're out of our reach, then we can begin taking steps towards achieving those things within our lifetime. If you're someone who has ever been to the gym, You can probably relate to this idea. Think about the first time you were at the gym. You were probably nervous about what you look like and thought that other people might have been making fun of you. There was a whole lot of insecurity there because you assumed that other people were going to feel the way about you. But once you have been there for a little while, you start to realize that nobody was paying attention to you in the first place. And those judgmental thoughts that you were thinking came entirely from your own insecurities. Once you were able to remove those from your thought process, you were able to focus on the exercises that you were doing, meaning you had a higher likelihood of reaching your goals because that's all you were focusing on. The same logic applies to making money. Everybody wants to be a millionaire, but nobody wants to admit that they do because it's looked down upon by the general public. Now, I want to move on to idea number 3, which is an idea that I want you to let bounce around your head until you come up with ways to implement it into your own world. By the way, I spend a lot of time and energy making these videos so that I can provide value to you without taking up a bunch of your time. So if you can subscribe, then I can continue making content for you to learn from, and I would really appreciate it. Idea number 3 is to focus on creation more than you focus on competition. What can you contribute to make everybody's lives easier in your industry or niche? How can you add value to other people's businesses and careers? This is important because if you want to be rich, you have to be the source of value. And on top of that, your business can't grow by pushing down others, because that leaves you with nobody to support you. Even though a little bit of healthy competition is good, at the end of the day, we have to look at our industries and see how we can contribute to the growth of them as a whole and as a means to grow our own businesses. Alex Hormozy has a really good way of explaining it.
So the more aligned I can make my team and their life outcomes with my personal life outcomes, then the more aligned we'll be, and ultimately the faster we'll move in that direction because we're not pushing focus and effort in opposite directions. We're all 100% aligned. If you're thinking about doing something like this, I'd recommend it. I think that it's better to increase the size of the pie, give a handful of slices out to people who've helped you along the way.
You can't change the percentage you own of the whole, but you can increase the value of that percentage by helping everybody grow. From that point on, all you have to do is to stay afloat by creating more value within your own business, rinse and repeat.